The Bronze Age did not end in one night. But around 1200 BC, the ancient world began to break. For centuries, the Eastern Mediterranean had been connected by trade, diplomacy, royal marriages, armies, ships, and letters written on clay tablets. Egypt, the Hittite Empire, Mycenaean Greece, Cyprus, Canaan, and the cities of the Levant were part of a wide international system. Bronze, the metal that defined the age, depended on long-distance trade. Copper and tin had to move across regions. Kings exchanged gifts. Merchants crossed the sea. Palaces stored grain, weapons, luxury goods, and records. Then, within a few generations, much of this system collapsed. Cities were destroyed or abandoned. Palaces burned. Trade routes weakened. Writing disappeared in some regions. The Hittite Empire, one of the great powers of the late Bronze Age, fell apart. Mycenaean palace culture in Greece broke down. Important cities in the Levant, including Ugarit, were destroyed. And in Egyptian records during this period of crisis, a strange enemy appears. They are known today as the Sea Peoples, but that name is modern. These groups did not call themselves the Sea Peoples. The label comes from Egyptian descriptions of foreign peoples connected with the sea, islands, ships, and northern lands. The most famous evidence comes from the reign of Pharaoh Ramesses III, especially the inscriptions and reliefs at Medinet Habu. These texts describe a massive movement of peoples who came by land and by sea. According to the Egyptian account, they had already devastated other lands before turning toward Egypt. The names recorded include groups such as the Peleset, Diakar, Shekelesh, Shond-Denyen, and Weshesh. Other Egyptian records from earlier periods also mention names such as Shurden, Luka, Teresh, and Ekwesh. These names are one reason the Sea Peoples remain mysterious. Some may have come from the Aegean world. Some may have come from Anatolia. Some may have been connected to Cyprus, the Levant, or other coastal regions. Some may have been warriors, migrants, pirates, refugees, or displaced communities. The truth is probably not one simple answer. This is important. Modern historians do not usually explain the collapse of the Bronze Age by saying, "The Sea Peoples destroyed everything." That idea is too simple. Eric Klein, in his work on 1177 BC and the Late Bronze Age collapse, argues that the collapse was more like a systems failure. The ancient world was highly connected, but that also made it fragile. If trade failed, if harvests failed, if cities rebelled, if earthquakes damaged key centers, if wars disrupted supply lines, the whole network could begin to fall. The Sea Peoples may have been part of the disaster, but they may also have been a result of it. If kingdoms were collapsing, food was scarce, and the trade networks were breaking, people moved. Armies moved, refugees moved, raiders moved. The line between invasion and migration becomes difficult to separate. That is what makes this story so dark. The Sea Peoples were not just mysterious attackers appearing from nowhere. They may have been the human face of a collapsing world. When the system failed, people did not stay still. They crossed the sea. They entered foreign lands. They attacked cities. They searched for survival. From the Egyptian point of view, they were enemies. Ramesses III presented himself as the king who stopped them. His inscriptions describe Egypt defeating them in battle, especially in a naval confrontation near the Nile Delta. But even if Egypt survived, it was weakened. The old Bronze Age world did not return. The great age of palace kingdoms, international trade, and powerful empires was ending. After the collapse, the Eastern Mediterranean entered a new period. Some societies disappeared from the record, others transformed. New peoples and new kingdoms emerged. The Sea Peoples stand at the center of this transition because they are both visible and unclear. The Hotri, we know their names from Egyptian inscriptions. We see their ships, warriors, and families in Egyptian reliefs, but we still do not fully know who they were. Were they invaders, refugees, mercenaries, pirates, displaced peoples from a dying world? Maybe they were all of these things at once. And that is why the Sea Peoples remain one of the most unsettling mysteries of ancient history. They appear in the record at the moment when the Bronze Age world was burning. They come from the sea, from the edges of maps, from lands that were already in chaos. And behind them, the old world disappears. The Sea Peoples were not one nation. That is one of the most important things to understand. They were a collection of groups known mainly from Egyptian records, and even those records show them through the eyes of Egypt. We do not have their own version of the story. We do not have a Sea Peoples archive explaining who they were, why they moved, or what they wanted. What we have are names: Peliset, Chieker, Shekelesh, Denian, Weshesh, Sherden, Luka, Teresh, Ekwesh. These names appear in Egyptian sources connected with the reigns of Merneptah and Ramesses III. Merneptah fought some of these groups around 1207 BC. About 30 years later, Ramesses III claimed to have faced a major land and sea invasion in the 8th year of his reign, around 1177 BC. The most famous images of this conflict are at Medinet Habu, Ramses III's mortuary temple. The reliefs do not simply show a normal battle. They show ships, warriors, families, ox carts, prisoners, and foreign groups moving toward Egypt. This is one reason historians still debate what was really happening. Was this an invasion? Was it a migration? Was it a refugee movement? Was it a military confederation? Or was it all of these at the same time? The Egyptian inscriptions present Ramesses III as the defender of Egypt. According to the Egyptian account, the Sea Peoples had already destroyed or disrupted other lands before reaching Egypt. The text names places such as Hatti, Kode, Carchemish, Arzawa, and Alashia as part of the wider disaster. Some of those names are important. Hatti refers to the Hittite world in Anatolia. The Hittite Empire was one of the great powers of the Late Bronze Age, a rival of Egypt and a central player in international diplomacy. But around this period, the Hittite system broke apart. Its capital, Hattasa, was abandoned or destroyed, and the old imperial structure disappeared. Alashia is usually identified with Cyprus, a crucial island in the Bronze Age economy because of its copper. Copper was one of the key ingredients for bronze. If Cyprus was unstable, the entire metal supply network could be affected. This is why the Sea Peoples cannot be understood only as raiders with swords. They appear at a moment when the whole Eastern Mediterranean system was under pressure. One of the most dramatic examples comes from Ugarit, a wealthy city on the Syrian coast. Ugarit was connected to Egypt, Cyprus, the Hittites, and the wider trade world. Its archives preserve letters from the final years before its destruction. In one famous letter, the king of Ugarit responds to a warning from Alashia. He says that enemy ships have arrived, his cities have been burned, and his own troops and ships are away. The message is terrifying because it is not mythology. It is administration in a moment of collapse. The city is exposed. Help is not coming in time, and soon after, Ugarit disappears as a major Bronze Age power. But even here, we have to be careful. Not every destruction layer can be blamed directly on the Sea Peoples. Archaeologists and historians warn against turning them into a simple explanation for every burned city. Some sites were destroyed by attack. Some were abandoned. Some declined. Some transformed. This is why Eric Klein describes the late Bronze Age collapse as a perfect storm of problems. Climate stress, drought, famine, earthquakes, rebellions, warfare, disruption of trade, and the movement of peoples. The Sea Peoples were part of this storm, but they were not necessarily the only cause. A. Bernard Knapp also warns that migration at the end of the Bronze Age should be studied carefully, not treated as a simple story of one people invading another. Human mobility can include warriors, families, merchants, displaced communities, and refugees. The same movement can look very different depending on who is describing it. From Egypt's point of view, these groups were enemies. From their own point of view, they may have been people searching for land, food, survival, or power in a world that was already falling apart. That is what makes the Sea Peoples so hard to define. Their ships may have carried warriors, but they may also have carried families. Their movement may have destroyed cities, but it may also have been caused by the destruction of their own homes. Their names survive in Egyptian victory texts, but their own voices are mostly gone. In the end, the Sea Peoples are not frightening only because they attacked. They are frightening because they appear exactly when the Bronze Age system begins to fail. They are seen in the smoke of burning cities, in letters asking for help, in abandoned palaces, in broken trade routes, and in the Egyptian reliefs, frozen in stone, moving toward the last great kingdom still standing. Ramesses III claimed victory over the Sea Peoples. In the Egyptian version of the story, Egypt survived because the pharaoh stopped them. At Medinet Habu, the reliefs show enemy ships trapped, warriors defeated, prisoners taken, and Egypt standing firm while other lands had fallen. But survival is not the same as recovery. Egypt did not collapse in the same way as the Hittite Empire or the Mycenaean palace system, but it was weakened. In the following decades, Egypt's power outside its borders declined. Its control over parts of Canaan faded. The old international world of the late Bronze Age was gone, and Egypt could not rebuild it. This is one of the most important points about the Sea Peoples. Even where they were defeated, the world they entered did not return to normal. After the collapse, the Eastern Mediterranean changed. The Hittite Empire disappeared as a major imperial power. Mycenaean Greece lost its palace centers and writing system. Ugarit was destroyed and never came back as the same kind of city. Long-distance trade became weaker. Large palace economies gave way to smaller, more local political systems. This was the end of one age and the beginning of another. The Bronze Age was giving way to the Iron Age. The Sea Peoples are often placed at the doorway between these two worlds. One group is especially important: the Peliset. Many scholars connect the Peliset of Egyptian records with the Philistines, who later appear in the southern coastal region of Canaan. Archaeology in Philistine cities such as Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, Gath, and Gaza shows cultural connections that may point to Aegean influence, especially in pottery and settlement patterns. But even here, the story is not simple. The Philistines were not just foreign warriors frozen in time. Over generations, they became part of the local world of the southern Levant. Their culture changed. They adopted local customs, mixed with local populations, and became one of the major groups of the early Iron Age. So when we talk about the Sea Peoples, we should not imagine a single invading army that arrived, destroyed everything, and disappeared. Some groups may have raided. Some may have migrated. Some may have settled. Some may have joined local societies. Some may have become new peoples and new lands. That is why the mystery remains. The Sea Peoples are visible in Egyptian art and inscriptions, but their own voices are almost missing. We know them mostly from enemies who describe them after battle. That means every answer is limited. We can study names, weapons, ships, pottery, destruction layers, migration patterns, and ancient letters, but we still do not have the full picture. Modern historians have become more careful because of this. The old version of the story was simple. Mysterious invaders came from the sea and destroyed the Bronze Age. The newer version is more complicated and probably closer to the truth. The Bronze Age world was already under stress. Climate problems may have affected food supplies. Earthquakes may have damaged cities. Trade networks may have failed. Internal rebellions may have weakened kingdoms. Wars may have drained resources. When several problems hit a highly connected system at the same time, collapse can spread fast. The Sea Peoples may have been attackers, but they may also have been people pushed into motion by the same collapse that they helped accelerate. In that sense, they were both cause and symptom. They were not the only reason the Bronze Age ended, but they became one of its most powerful symbols. They represent the moment when the old palace world could no longer protect itself. Kings who had once exchanged royal letters and luxury gifts suddenly faced burned cities, broken supply lines, and people moving across the sea with weapons, carts, and families. The Sea Peoples are frightening because they are not fully understood. They come into history through crisis. They appear in the records when empires are falling, cities are burning, and rulers are asking for help that will not arrive in time. And then, after the destruction, they become harder to see. Some vanish from the sources, some change names, some settle, some become part of the new Iron Age world. That is the final mystery. The Sea Peoples did not just attack the ancient world. They belonged to the collapse itself. They were created by it, carried by it, and remembered through it. By the time the smoke cleared, the map of the Eastern Mediterranean had changed. The great Bronze Age kingdoms were gone or weakened. New peoples, new cities, and new powers began to rise. The world of the pharaohs, Hittite kings, Mycenaean palaces, and international bronze trade had been broken. And at the edge of that broken world, Egyptian stone reliefs still show them. Ships in battle, families on the move, warriors with strange names coming from the sea. We may never know exactly who they were,